Hello everyone, welcome to Oculi Auribus. This is your host, Mike Ellis, with the MEE Mike Ellis Experience. This podcast is dedicated to aggressive thinking. This should be the new norm. Instead of hiding behind soft emotional concepts that we try to run our lives with, we tend to shy away from real conversations. The idea of having an intellectual conversation or debate with another human being that disagrees with you are days that are no longer here. This is dedicated to that old standard of real intellectual conversation. Feel free to disagree with my perspective that I'm giving to you. My DMs on many platforms are always open. I will have a conversation with you in a professional, aggressive manner, and hopefully we can come either eye to eye or we could agree that we both have our merits and that it's not about disagreeing with each other, but understanding that this is an educated conversation that should be able to lead not policy, but the freedom of the mind in a more productive way. All right, everybody, welcome back to Oculi Auribus. This is your host, Mike Ellis. This episode is produced by John Solis and is a Yuckfo production. I just want to give a quick shout out to Q30. That's my boy who does a fantastic sports podcast. I'm not much of a foosball man myself these days, but I will tell you this much. His understanding and ability to transcribe through voice what he sees in the multitude of leagues and organizations out there is fantastic. He recently had me on one of his podcasts for the last big UFC pay-per-view. I highly recommend checking it out. We went on for, I think about 2 hours. But once again, that is Q30 Sports Podcast. It is available on all major platforms and is also a Anchor FM podcast, just like we are here at the one and only Oculi Auribus. All right, ladies and gentlemen. This episode is entitled American Totem. And it's only called American Totem because American Idol was already taken. So if you caught the preview or the trailer, whatever you guys want to call it, this is going to be about Cuba. But I think by the time we get done with this, it's going to be a little bit deeper than Cuba. And I think that's going to be kind of interesting to see where we really end on this. Time will tell, right? So I did mention to write down what you knew about Cuba, their history, and where they came from, where they're at, where they're going, kind of your thoughts on it. I did mention as a joke, but as a serious joke, that you could probably put as much information as you know about it on a little sticky note. And this isn't saying that you guys are ignorant or have no idea. It's just Cuba, for majority of our lives, if not all of our lives, depending on your age, is not necessarily a hermit nation, but there's a lot of we don't know. And I think a lot of what we do know, depending on your side of the opinion, might be skewed one way or another. So, 1942, when Columbus sailed the ocean blue, he claimed Cuba for Spain. It was in 1514 that Havana was founded. And in 1607 was accredited, if you will, for being the capital of the great country of Cuba. Now, I mentioned in the trailer, the preview, again, whatever you want to call it, that I do think Cuba is a great country. I don't think there's any bad countries. I think there's bad governments. I think people, by and large, just want to be good and want to have good lives and hopefully taste some freedom. And I don't necessarily mean American freedom, but there's many conceptualized versions of freedom that I think are fantastic out there for people. So, Cuba had slaves. Let's think about that real quick. Cuba had slaves. I think this is something that's kind of ignored because right now what you have in America is you have people saying, America's a terrible place because we had slaves and we need to atone for it. So just curiosity, when is Cuba going to have to atone for those slaves? I don't know. Just food for thought, right? 1603, the fantastic government that was in place in Cuba said, "We got fantastic tobacco, but you cannot sell it to foreigners, or we will kill you." That is correct, ladies and gentlemen. Selling tobacco was punishable by death. In 1868, the 10-Year War began, which is known as the War of Independence for Cuba. Now, what's interesting is it's in 1898, the Treaty of Paris is what technically freed Cuba. It made its own independent country. Well, put it on the path to be an independent country. But what I find really interesting about it is you're welcome. That was because we did that. The Treaty of Paris involved America, so you're welcome. A young country of America gave a little bit of freedom to Cuba. Now, in 1901, the Constitution was ratified. There was a lot of use of our Constitution. There's been a lot of use of our Constitution throughout the entire world. We do have what is considered by many to be the gold standard. And I guess depends who you ask and when you ask them when it comes to our American politics, if the Constitution is good or not. And now, so I know we kind of jumped around like 500 years pretty much, right? Just stick with me. 1959, Fidel Castro takes power. He was kind of helped by in part by Ernesto Che Guevara. Now, they kind of were doing their own thing, but Che definitely did have a lot of help in that area, if you will. And shortly after that, if it was an American-owned company or foreign-owned, or not company, agricultural stuff, so your farms and all that stuff, it was taken by the government. They virtually kicked out America. So we helped free them, and in about 50 years, they told us to fuck off. Now, granted, this is the land. It is Cuba. I think there could have been a better way to do this, but it's history. It is what it is, right? And in 1960, they decided to seize all American businesses and nationalize them. But again, we're the bad people here. Now, I mentioned Elian Gonzalez in the trailer. 1999. That was right before America had its eyes open from a brutal and heinous terrorist attack. And we batted an eye at Mr. Elian Gonzalez. We sent him back as quick as we could. It was a Clinton administration, and I can't remember the name of who's in charge of the Justice Department. It's out my brain right now. But yeah, sent him right back. We kind of found him on an inner tube or something like that nature. I can't really remember. But why did he leave? Right, Cuba is the greatest place. So these celebrities and some of these politicians will make you think. So I don't know why somebody would risk going on an inner tube across the ocean to come to America if Cuba was that great. I don't know what to tell you guys. I really don't. Somebody got an answer, please jump in and tell me why Elian Gonzalez made a mistake. Only mistake I could tell you is we sent him back. Over the years, some freedoms were given back, and people can invest in the government-owned companies. But again, it's government-owned companies. And if you want to get really dirty into it, I could easily say that I believe this is solely based on the idea of investing into a government business. Investing into government. It's almost like a tax in a way, but not so honest. They allowed people and foreign investors to invest into these companies that were owned by the government. What does that do? That gives the government more cash flow. Why? Because the government was doing so good, we just needed to reward them by giving them more money to hold them up. And yet, this is all America's fault, right? These embargoes that we put on Cuba, it's all our fault. You know, originally it was just America, and then we pushed it to allies and international, and we marked them. Granted, yes, for me to sit here and say that it had no negative impact is asinine. I'm not going to sit here and say that that's not a fact. It is a fact. There was some negative stuff that came up from all these things that we kind of put on the government, not the people, but the government. But again, so how is it America's fault, right? Fast forward to like 2 years ago or so, Hong Kong. There was riots in the streets, but there was American flags. There was these people stomping their feet and marching in solidarity, singing the American national anthem. The same one right now that we're told is racist. They were holding the same flag up that some people think is racist. I don't think by and large many people do. There's quite a few people who are out there thinking that the old Star Spangled Banner is racist. Yes, I know the other parts of the song, but that's not what the song is really about. And we shortened it, we moved it around, and we pay honor to our country with one of the better, arguably the best, if not one of the better national anthems. You know, there's some that go on there for like 30, 40 minutes. Like, I'm glad they don't get their gold medals. You know, it's like, good Lord, sitting through that. So you had this going on in Hong Kong, and now you see it going on in the streets of Cuba. And once again, these proud Cubans are out there stomping their feet into the ground, and the American flag's in the air. Now, I don't know if they're singing the national anthem, and it's not for lack of not caring. I just haven't seen it, and I haven't looked it up. But once again, in a place of turmoil, our flag is flown. Even if it's just one time, it's still there, right? Now, what the media, and I hate the term the media, the opinion medium, let's call it that, right? The emotion medium. Because journalism integrity is long dead and gone. And I'm not saying that I am anywhere near a journalist that is practicing journalistic integrity. The sole purpose of Oculi Auribus is a perspective, an opinion, an editorial. But I own that. Now, granted, I like to drive down the road and I see that line and I like to go in and out of that line. Because yes, I do bring facts to the table. And I do try to take as much emotion, if not all the emotion out that I can. But with these Cubans out there, these poor Cubans, some of them being pulled into servitude to their country for a belief they don't even believe in. They want freedom, they're tired of it. But what are we being told? We're being told it's about the vaccines. And America's the devil, right? It's this capitalist country. We're the worst thing in the world. But yet J&J is from Germany. Johnson & Johnson, it's a German-based company. Right? Is it Pfizer? I can't remember. One of them is from Germany. I think it's J&J. The vaccine is based out of Germany. But I don't see anybody getting mad at Germany for not forking over the money to give the vaccine. Now, I do want these people who do want the vaccine. We already did an episode on the vaccine. I think I made it a little obvious that I'm not the biggest fan of it. But if they want the vaccine, they should be able to get it. But it's their government. Their government's the one that's holding it back. Not the capitalist devils here in America. Not the capitalist devils in Germany. Even though they do have a huge social platform, they still have capitalism. Capitalism needs to exist. It's not a perfect system. But again, we go back to our country to form a more perfect union. Capitalism has a lot of issues in it right now that I think need to be fixed, maybe sucker punched out. But with America, we've had the cards stacked against us from the beginning, right? 13 small colonies in an area that nobody knew about. At least they didn't know enough information about it. But we thrived. We fought for our independence with help, and we thrived. We fought multiple wars in our country as we grew and expanded, but we thrived. We got brought into World War I, and we thrived. World War II, almost lost, but we thrived. Every time the country is put on the world showcase, we thrive. Yes, you can have your opinions about the current or ex-current wars, and to include Vietnam. But for the most part, our country thrives. With the cards stacked against us, we thrive. Why is it this industrial mindset of capitalism is the greatest thing in the world? I don't think so. It's our government's allowed us to be free people. That's something you can't take for granted. So I feel we all should be very blessed that our country lets us have that freedom. So is it the embargo or is it the government in Cuba that has destroyed the lives of so many fantastic Cubans? Jorge Masvidal, UFC fighter. If I'm not mistaken, his dad was able to escape the tyrannical government at the age of 14, and he's been here. He still has family down there. And he'll tell you, it's genocide and murder. It's not the green screen stuff that you see on the back end. The unedited story is far worse than the edited story that we're being told. I don't know, something about him having family in Cuba makes me want to believe his story a little bit more. But the system is so fucked. That's the problem. It's not our system, it's their system. And I don't have the ability to put crickets in the podcast because I'm cheap. But there would have been crickets there because it's not a joke. It's very serious. But the system being a joke. But the joke is predicated by what we do here in our country in a way. Here's a case in point, right? Right now, we're being told that the healthcare system is the reason these people are rising up and having issues, right? They want the vaccine, they want this, they want that. But, I think Bernie Sanders said what they're doing with medicine down in Cuba was pretty good. And I know the literacy, I can't even say literacy. The literacy rates and all that are good. I might be wrong on his opinion on healthcare, but I think I'm pretty on point with that. But Michael fucking Moore. Actually, I shouldn't even say Michael fucking Moore because they usually incorporate that curse word for people that I kind of like. So let's change it. It'll be Michael fuck him Moore. Because here's the thing. After 9/11, he argued that our system was so frail and incompetent that we couldn't take care of the first responders. Right after 9/11. So with his political diatribe and his statements of inaccuracies and fallacies, what did he do? He took these first responders to Cuba for treatment. They got the treatment. And they got better, I think, ? I'm not sure. So, over the course of 20 years, did that system collapse? Did the medical system in Cuba, did it collapse? And if it collapsed, is it due to America, or did it never really exist? If I had to bet 1 million Cuban pesos on my answer, and if I doubled it back in American, I'd have about $100,000. But I would bet that money. I would tell you that the system was never there. It was there for those that mattered, not for the people. It was there for the celebrities of America to sell an image of communism and Marxism. It was there for the politicians that went there, but it wasn't there for the people. It's the same shit you see in North Korea, but now we acknowledge it, I think. Celebrities have made Cuba a second home, in a way, and they have partaken in everything it has to offer for the elites, and only the elites. It's crazy because they do the same thing here in our country, except you have more to be offered if you're poor here in our country, if you have less. But let's think about that. The elites of our country, when it comes to and I don't mean they're real elites. They believe they're elites. There's these musicians, there's these actors and actresses, right? I mean, come on. Oliver Stone stated that Fidel was selfless and one of the wisest men he's ever met. Jack Nicholson and Leonardo DiCaprio, who had their rooms bugged, Jack said Fidel was brilliant. I find it crazy how those who can talk can sway opinion. It's these idols of our land, and they're not the real idols, but we've placed them up there to sell us the bullshit in tow. That's really what it is. But yet Cuba's failing, right? Or has Cuba failed? Or has Cuba been failed? I think it's been failed. I think the Cuban people have never had a great opportunity because the people in power have continued to oppress them. And they've done so well by using what the CIA would probably say are some extremely great tactics. So what has stopped the glorious nation, the government? I'm sure it's us. What has stopped the regime from fixing these things? Again, I'm sure it's us. They refuse help by destroying its own country, a failed state being micromanaged by Russia. If you don't believe me, look it up. There's plenty of proof out there. But what's funny is, this is the country, Russia, that we hate. And all this, Trump was a Russian asset. If that's true, then why did Trump lose? If he's a Russian asset, people love Cuba and what the Cuban government was or is supposed to be, then you would elect the people that could empower that change. Except none of that's true, and we know that. I mean, by the thought, if Trump technically was a Russian asset, and this is reaching, his Russian asset, and Russia's been meddling in Cuba, isn't 1 + 1 2? That's the logic that a lot of people like to use. I don't think it was ever an option, though. I don't even think if it was true that that'd be where we got. We have a better government. It's a shit show, but it's a better government. Now, here's the thing. I'm not smart, but I'm also not Bernie Sanders either. Common sense is easy to have when you just look through the glass. It's crazy how we live in a world of American Idol politics. If you sound good and copy someone else's work, you can be famous as well. It's the pretty voices of the media that tell us how to feel. As long as it's in tone and in key, many people will listen to their voices. I'm not going to tell you to wake up, because that's not what this podcast is about. But I think the real world's a bit frightening to the same token. But what I will tell you is don't sleep so deep that you ignore the obvious. Now, a few quotes by, now we mentioned a lot of Castro, right? But you have these celebrities that love to wear Che shirts. Now, this is why. This is why they like to wear Che shirts. Let the world change you, and you can change the world. That's funny. If you can find a way without any obstacles, it probably leads nowhere. The life of a single human being is worth 1,000,000 times more than all the property of the richest man on earth. Be realistic, demand the impossible. You can live by your own rules. It blows my mind. These are all $2 quotes, right? They sound good. Hell, got the man on a t-shirt. Hitler had some really good quotes too, but I don't see people stamping him on a shirt. So people, tell me, why was Che? Why was Raul? Why was Fidel so great? With everything they could have done, they've done nothing. But again, I know everyone's go-to. It's these embargoes. It's what we did. Here's the thing. These embargoes took place, right? We were already making automobiles. They had them there. They could reverse engineer them. They had the capabilities. The technology's not that crazy. But they didn't. They don't want the people to have better. They want the people to have enough to know that they need the government. I think that's what it's all about. I find it funny how if you took a popularity, now this is hyperbole, but I think if you took a poll, you'd find out there might be a little bit more Americans that like the regime in Cuba right now than there are Cubans who like the regime. Now, don't ask those elitists that are sitting above the glass ceiling. The funny thing about the glass ceiling in Cuba is it's going to take a revolution to bring it down. And that might not be a revolution marred in bloodshed and death, but it's going to take a revolution to bring down that glass ceiling. Because the fantastic thing about the glass ceiling in Cuba is it's really just a see-through steel roof, designed so well. And our own people here in our own country, some politicians, just like the great peanut farmer ex-president, one of the worst presidents in my mind, in modern history, let me say that, modern American history. Carter, great man, terrible, terrible leader, thought the world of Cuba, thought the world of Fidel. The celebrities do the same. These celebrities that we try to model ourselves after, who get paid so much money, and yet they tell us that Cuba treats their people right, while they treat people less and less themselves. Well, in typical fashion, I can go on and on, but it's time to move on. Mike Ellis, out. Hey everybody, quick reminder, this is Mike Ellis with Oculi Auribus. Don't forget to follow us on Podchaser, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor FM, Sticher. We are everywhere, and we are now on YouTube. I prefer you stick to the good old style version of podcasting, but we are on the YouTube platform as well. Give us a like, a share, and a follow. And as always, everyone, the DMs are always open. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram as well, and we are starting to post stuff on Pinterest. I'm not a Pinteresty person, but working on it, okay? So until next time, Mike Ellis, double out.